It's not often that I come across a build that I genuinely struggle to stop using just because of how fun and good it is. But when you see what we have in store today, you'll understand exactly why. This Beyblade slinging, woven mail wearing, Spider-Man grappling Strand Hunter build, revealed to me by Gearhead Geek from my new Will It Build video series, has some of the craziest survivability, movement, damage, and fun factor that I've ever seen. So consider hitting that subscribe button down below if you're part of the 60% of viewers not yet subscribed, so I can tell you all about your new favorite build. But you know what isn't your favorite? Getting a bunch of spam calls from unknown numbers, which is why I'm so thankful for today's sponsor, Aura. Data brokers are making a fortune selling your information to robocallers and spammers, but Aura can identify these brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf that they are legally required to honor. Aura also does much more to protect you and your family from online threats with tools like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and much more, all for one affordable price. So you can either let people continue to exploit and profit off your private information, or you can go to aura.com/Mactics to start your 2-week free trial right now. Big thanks to Aura. Now let's grapple, baby. And grapple we shall, beginning with the main function of this build, the Grapple Grenade, which allows you to weave a grappling hook to pull yourself forward until you either move too far away or look away from the grapple point, or deactivate your connection to the grapple by either reactivating your grenade button or by pressing the button that causes your gun to aim down sights. Additionally, during and for a short period after grappling, you can activate your melee ability to do a grapple melee lunge towards the direction you are facing that will deal area of effect damage and unravel any hit targets. The final thing we need to mention about the Grapple Grenade is something that I guarantee most of you won't know. When using the Grapple Grenade, if you activate the grapple and then immediately break the connection with either of the two previously mentioned means, only 50% of your grenade energy will be consumed instead of the entire grenade charge. While that might not seem significant, you'll understand why it is such a crucial piece of knowledge once we arrive at our aspects in just a few minutes. So do me a favor and please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you didn't know that grapple grenade tip before watching this build guide. This grenade also pairs beautifully with the Hunter Exotic Helmet Certarachne's Facade, the name that I did admittedly mispronounce in my Will It Build video that inspired this build guide, which is a shame because I was so confident that I said it right. Certarachne's Facade, which is how you pronounce it. I promise. We all take L's sometimes. Unlike this helmet, which is a massive W for this build, providing 10 seconds worth of woven mail, a 55% damage resistance buff anytime you grapple, and provides flinch resistance while in possession of the woven mail buff. But to make the most out of our Grapple Grenade and Certarachne's Facade woven mail perk, we need to look at our first aspect, Widow's Silk, which in addition to granting 2 fragment slots, also grants an additional grenade ability charge, and, most importantly, allows grapples to create a grapple tangle, more commonly referred to as a grapple point. And these grapple points really unlock the true potential of this build, as when using your grapple grenade on an already existing grapple point, none of your grenade energy is consumed in any capacity, allowing you to infinitely grapple so long as you attach to a grapple point. These grapple points last on the field for 15 seconds, but have that timer refreshed in full anytime that they are grappled to, meaning that so long as you grapple to an existing grapple point at least once every 15 seconds, it will never leave the battlefield. And like I said before, this aspect is what makes that grapple grenade early cancel 50% refund trick from before absurdly useful. This is because with this trick, you are able to preemptively deploy 2 different grapple points on the field, consuming only 50% of a grenade charge each before you start swinging, leaving you still with 1 full grenade charge to use to go back and forth between these 2 grapple points as you conduct battle. But even if you are looking to just simply move from one location to the other, it is still in your best interest to utilize this trick, as instead of just grappling and consuming a whole grenade charge, you can instead pre-plant the grapple point, consuming 50% of your grenade energy, and then immediately grapple to that point for free to get to your destination. Mastering this 50% energy cancel mechanic and the grapple point 15-second refresh mechanic are the keys to mastering this build and having a battlefield full of available grapple points, so be sure to make the most out of them whenever possible. Moving on to arguably the most satisfying part of this build, we have our second aspect, Whirling Maelstrom, which in addition to granting 2 fragment slots, also creates a spinning ball of Strand destruction when destroying a tangle, which roams around like a death Roomba to kill enemies and emit unraveling projectiles upon their deaths. And remember that a tangle is a Strand artifact that spawns when defeating any Strand debuffed target, that is, any target that is suspended, unraveled, or severed, and can be shot and destroyed or picked up and thrown to not only deal massive AoE damage, but to also spawn our Whirling Maelstrom. And because our Whirling Maelstrom creates unraveling projectiles when killing enemies, those projectiles will then infect other enemies to make them spawn tangles as well, which can of course also be destroyed to create more Whirling Maelstroms to feed the loot. It's also important to note that just like grapple points, tangles and Whirling Maelstroms can also be grappled without consuming any grenade energy whatsoever, further enabling your ability to swing around the battlefield. Another thing that will greatly complement our current setup is the Thread of Ascent fragment, which upon using your grenade reloads your currently held weapon and grants a 30 stat bonus to handling, 40 stat bonus to reload speed, and 30 stat bonus to airborne effectiveness, all for 15 seconds. This 15-second Thread of Ascent buff timer really comes in handy as well for the purposes of tracking your grapple point lifespans, as since both the grapple point despawn and Thread of Ascent buff timers are 15 seconds, you can use this buff as an indicator to know when you need to re-grapple to an existing grapple point to keep it on the field. It also helps greatly to invest into the Marksman Dodge class ability for this build as well, giving you another method to instantly reload your currently held weapon to allow for some pretty nasty DPS combos. This is nice because the Thread of Ascent does have a 4-second cooldown period for reloading your currently held weapon, but with your Marksman Dodge in the mix, you can fire off something like 4 rockets in a matter of seconds by shooting, grappling to proc the Thread of Ascent reload and shooting again, dodging to proc the Marksman Dodge reload and shooting again, and finally grappling to proc the Thread of Ascent reload again to fire your 4th rocket. Another incredible fragment for this build is the Thread of Generation, which simply grants grenade energy for each instance of damage you deal, which gets out of control pretty quickly considering how many individual instances of damage are created from your Whirling Maelstroms, to result in tons of grenade energy refunds all of the time. For fragment number 3, we will look to the Thread of Fury, which refunds melee energy when dealing damage with tangles. And because Whirling Maelstrom damage technically counts as tangle damage, Whirling Maelstroms will also proc the activation of this fragment to keep you topped off on melee energy throughout fights, which is extremely important when considering some of our armor mods that we will talk about shortly. Finally, we have the Thread of Transmutation, which spawns tangles on weapon final blows while you are in possession of the Woven Mail buff. Admittedly, this doesn't get utilized a whole lot due to both the already plentiful ways you have to generate tangles in conjunction with their 12-second creation cooldown, but there is honestly not any Strand fragment option better than this one for the 4th slot. Besides, having an extra way to spawn a tangle on demand never hurt anybody. Well, not anybody important. Now, before we get to our mods, I want to talk about some secret tricks with our melee and super abilities with this build. Beginning with the Threaded Spike melee ability, it's no secret that after sending it out, you can reactivate your melee ability at the right time to catch it as it returns to you, for a large refund to that melee ability. Unfortunately, the trick where you simply hold your melee button the entire time to guarantee a catch does not work anymore. But what does work is simply looking at your ability icons to look for when the melee button lights up green. Without having to pay attention to where your Threaded Spike is whatsoever, hitting your melee the moment that this button turns green guarantees a catch every time. But we also have our super ability, Silk Strike, which of course provides a light attack to deal massive damage to targets in a line, and a heavy attack to deal solid damage in a 360-degree arc around your character. What is less known about this super ability though is that every time your feet touch the ground while in this super, both of your grapple grenades are instantly refilled, meaning that while in Silk Strike, you effectively have infinite grapple grenade fuel to swing around the map and create as many grapple points as you'd like. Moving to our mods, we begin on the helmet with a Siphon mod matching your ad-clearing weapon of choice for Orb of Power generation on multi-kills. We'll also want a copy of Dynamo on the helmet for bonus super energy when dodging near enemy targets, wrapping up with a copy of Heavy Ammo Finder to stay topped off on purple bricks. Working down to the gloves, we'll start with a copy of Heavy Handed to generate Orbs of Power on melee final blows, which procs not only on threaded spike kills, but also on grapple melee final blows as well. You'll also want a copy of both Impact Induction and Focusing Strike to refund a chunk of grenade and class ability energy respectively when dealing melee damage of any kind. Moving down to the chest, you'll simply want to apply 3 copies of resistance mods matching the elements of damage being dealt by your enemies in whatever activity you are playing. Since this build likes to play at close ranges, these extra resistances will help keep you safe. On the boots, you'll kick things off with Recuperation for a chunk of healing when scavenging an Orb of Power, followed by 2 weapon surge mods matching an element of your choice for a 17% weapon damage buff when armor charged. Finally, for the class item, you'll take a copy of Reaper for Orb of Power generation on weapon final blows after dodging, followed by a copy of Powerful Attraction to scavenge all nearby Orbs of Power when using that very dodge, finishing with a copy of Bomber to restore a chunk of grenade energy when using that dodge as well. Finish things off with stat armor mods prioritizing resilience, discipline, and mobility in that order, and you're all set to go and cause some carnage. To get started right away, look to use those Mobalytics written guide and Destiny item manager links in the description to easily copy this build over to your Guardian at any time. And while you're down there, I'd appreciate your consideration in tagging those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed this build video. If you're looking for more builds to add to your arsenal, go ahead and check out this 90% damage resistance Stasis Hunter setup next. I'll see you in the live stream. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.